say that maybe I'm in the same place as a lot of you. I did not know until very recently that we had an Eva Larsen in our church with such a story. I've seen Eva for a long time, and I would speak to her, but I didn't know she had the story that she has to share today. And I think you've read from what's been in the bulletin that she was part of the Danish Underground. And she has a real story. And I'm not going to say any more than that, but just to introduce Eva. We want her to tell her story. At the end of that, we will have a question and answer period. So as you're listening, if you have a question, there'll be time for that. So help me welcome Eva to the microphone.
Thank you. I'm just a member of St. Mark's. I'm going to take you back to 1939. When Hitler decided he was going to take over the world and teach us what was the right thing to do. I was 17 years old and had just finished high school when Hitler invaded Denmark, because he had already started fighting with a few countries in Europe, but he needed somebody to take care of the soldiers that were wounded, and of course Denmark wasn't big enough to fight, so he just invaded. They came in during the night in the early 40s. And we woke up in the morning and there were all the German soldiers everywhere. They dismissed our police force and told them they were not needed anymore, that they would take over and run the country. The first thing they wanted was to collect our guns. Well, that was very easy because no one in Denmark owned a gun. The only guns were the big farmers. They had rifles because they did a lot of hunting. Well, when they didn't get any guns, then they decided that it was better if we couldn't get any information about what was going on, so they collected all our radios. At least they thought they did. The people in the underground had enough radios so we could keep in touch with England and find out what was going on. And that's what we did mostly as youngsters. Because I was 17 years old, but you know, when you're 17, you know it all, and you're ready to fight. And I had an older brother, and that was the only reason I got into the underground, because that's where he was, and he was going to take care of me. I was trying to decide what to do after high school, and I wanted to be a nurse. And my father said that would be over his dead body. So that was out. But I had to find a way where I could get off the little island where I was born, and I wanted to go to Copenhagen. That's where my brother was. So I decided maybe if I told Daddy I was going in there and learn how to take care of children, he would let me go. And he did. So I ended up with my brother in Copenhagen, and I was introduced to the Underground. We were very lucky. We had a young lady there. She was part of the Underground, but she was also in the German embassy. And she could find out everything that they were planning and what they were doing, and she would let us know ahead of time. And that is how we managed to get some of the Jewish people out. Because in the early 40s, a lot of the shops in Copenhagen and a lot of factories was run by Jewish people. So she found out that they had gone to all the synagogues and gotten all the names and addresses of all the Jewish people in Denmark. Well, they didn't have all of them because Denmark is not one big country. It's a lot of islands. And they only had the names of the ones that were in the part where Copenhagen is. So we decided in the Underground we had to help the Jewish people, because suddenly one day all the shops that run by Jewish people were closed. All the factories were closed down. And she told us that they were planning to round up the Jewish people and send them to Germany, which meant the concentration camps. So we were lucky because Denmark is surrounded by water. And of course, a lot of people that live on the coast, they were all fishermen. And they had boats. And that was how we were going to try to get the Jewish people out. And Sweden had consented to, if we could get them to Sweden, they would take it from there and they would see that there was no harm coming to them. Well, we had to get the Jewish people up and along the coast to where the boats were. And that was quite a job because a lot of the Jews, when they found out they were going to buy fishing boats, they said, no, thank you. They weren't going to go on those smelly boats. And of course, they couldn't take much with them. We said you can take one suitcase and that's it. Well, that wasn't, they wanted to take everything they owned. Well, we did manage to get most of them out. Of course, the Germans realized that something was going on because all of a sudden all the Jewish people were on vacation. Couldn't find any of them. Well, we got a lot of them up the coast, and the people living on the coast would take care of them, and they had to go and get on the boat during the night. Well, pretty soon the Germans sent the soldiers up there, and no boats were leaving the harbor without being searched by the German soldiers. Well, it's kind of hard to hide somebody in a little fishing boat if you have soldiers coming looking for them. Well, we fooled them for a long while, but then they decided the German soldiers would bring dogs with them. Well, that was the end of that because the dogs can smell with their people around. So we had to quit. Then we got a lot of them sent out in the country, and the farmers would hide them, and that was great for the ones that had small children, because you can't tell a 1 or 2-year-old they have to be quiet and not move. That doesn't mean anything to them. And the Jews, the mothers were not too keen on us sedating the kids. They were afraid that we would sedate them for good. But we got a lot of them out. And of course, you know, when Hitler went against Russia, that was one of his downfalls, because he could not fight. And the German soldiers were not used to the climate in Russia. And a lot of them froze to death. But where he made his big mistake was he went against Russia and England at the same time. And that was his downfall. And in early 45, we ran all the soldiers out of Denmark and celebrated, because the war was over. Well, we decided that we were going to help set up a new government. They gave us guns, told us to shoot. They gave us pills to take in case we were caught by the Germans. But we couldn't vote. You had to be 23 years old to vote. So we said, well, farewell. You can have the country. We'll go somewhere else where we appreciate. So most of the young boys went to Canada, and I and 2 other young girls went to England. I got a job in England as a governess, and I stayed there for 2 years. During that time, when I had time off, I went into London and stayed at the Y, and I met a lot of the American ladies that were in the service and were stationed in England. Of course, they told me all about America and showed me pictures and magazines. I kept saying I couldn't believe any of that, because that was just completely foreign to us. And they said, well, why don't you go over there and see for yourself? And I thought, well, that is the best idea I've heard of. The next chance I had, I went to the American Embassy in London and said, I would like to immigrate to America. And they looked at me and they said, well, so would 100 other people. And they said, you are on a visa here in England. You can't get a visa to go to America. Besides, at that time, each country had a quota. And you have to go back to your own country and apply and hope the quota isn't filled. So I went home and I resigned my job and I went back to Denmark. And I decided I wasn't going to let the family know that I was back in Denmark. So I was looking to get a job, because I had to make some money to go to America. Well, I was going through the paper on the train into Copenhagen, and I found an advertisement that said, American family looking for a governess to take care of 2 children temporarily. And I thought, boy, there is my chance. If I can get that job, they will probably take me with them when they go back to America. So I got to Copenhagen and I called the number, and the gentleman said, when can you come and talk to us? And I said, how about tomorrow? So that was all set up, and I got the job. And I told him, I said, I want to immigrate to America. He went with me to the American Embassy and talked to them. And the guy said, it's too bad because the quota is filled. The guy said, well, we can't go without her because she takes care of the kids. And he said, well, you know, you have to have somebody in America that will guarantee for you that you will never become a burden to the American government. Well, I didn't know anybody that could do that, but we were lucky. We had a gentleman staying at the home that was from Kentucky, one of the wealthy tobacco people. And he said, if that's what you want to do, I will guarantee for you. And so we went back, or he went back to the embassy and talked to them. And a week later, I got a call from the embassy and said, young lady, you can pack your bag. You are on the way. And that's how I got to come to this country. We stayed in New York for about a week. And then they had to decide where they want to live. And they finally decided that the South is where they wanted to be. So we came down to North Carolina and settled in Greenville, North Carolina. Well, I found out Americans don't need a governess. You have nursery schools, you have kindergartens. You don't need anybody. So the family knew that I had always